Hi, my name is Joe Bartolomeo. I'm a personal injury lawyer in Astoria, Oregon. I also have offices in Hillsboro, Oregon. And in today's video, I want to cover future lost earnings in the Oregon injury claim and kind of give you some thoughts on that. Now, before I get into that, I need to kind of set this up and so that it's in context. So when you have a claim against somebody else, somebody who causes you an injury, for example, somebody maybe runs into the back of your car and you're in the car and you're injured, you have a claim against that other driver for your damages. And in Oregon, the statute classifies damages as either economic or non-economic. And I have other videos that go much more detail about what those are, but essentially economic losses are those things that are objective, and one of the objective losses that we claim in these kinds of cases is lost income. Most of the time, but not all of the time, the income lost is a past event. And what I mean by that is you may have been injured and you lost a month or two of work, but you went back to work, and by the time the claim is resolved or filed in court, we have a beginning and an end date to your lost income. In this video, we're going to cover those kinds of cases where the lost income continues after your claim is either resolved by settlement or filed in court. And I want to explain how we make those claims and what kind of claims are involved. So the first thing that we're looking at is probably the most straight ahead, and that is the future lost earnings claim. So if you have a life-changing injury, and as a result of that injury, you are no longer able to do the job or work the job that you were working, then you have a potential claim for future lost income. And when we handle these kinds of claims, we're usually getting an economist involved who will look at your past earnings, look at your age, look at other various factors that allow the economist to figure out how you would have progressed with your career. And then what they do is they project out into the future the amount of money you would have earned but for the fact that you were injured as a result of somebody else's carelessness or negligence. And they calculate a figure. Now, there are some assumptions that are built into that, but economists will usually look at things like your vocational abilities, your educational background, how well you were doing in your career at the time of the injury, your age, obviously, because we need to know the number of years before retirement. And then they use, amongst other factors, to calculate the amount of money you would have earned but for the injury. Now, another factor that plays into this is what we call present value. And so, for example, if I'm 50 years old, which I wish I still was, but if I'm 50 years old and I were going to work for the next 20 years and I was injured and could not work for the next 20 years, and I made a claim for all the money I would have made, if somebody gave that money to me today for the next 20 years, I can put that money into an interest-bearing account. And by the time I'm 70 years old, I'm going to actually have more money than had I not been hurt and worked all the way to 70. And so the concept that plays into this is called present value. So what oftentimes an economist will do is factor that into the calculation and say, look, if this person were not injured and disabled, they would have made X dollars in the next 20 years. And for us to get to that figure, we would have to determine how much money would you have to put in an interest-bearing account so that in 20 years, you would end up with the same amount of money. Now, that might be an overly simplistic explanation of present value, but I think it makes the point. The other concept that comes into play with a future lost earning claim is a legal concept called mitigation. Now, the law sets out duties for everybody. Everybody has certain legal responsibilities, and in the law we call them duties. And we have a duty to mitigate our damages. So if and this is an example that I often use. Let's say that, I don't know, a tree falls on my house in a rainstorm, and the next day, I'm standing there out in front of my house, and there's this big tree on my roof. Now, I have a duty to mitigate or limit the amount of harm that results from that loss. So that means I need to call somebody, or I need to get on that ladder and get a tarp on that house to minimize the damage from that rain coming into the house. That's a good example of mitigation, or the duty of mitigation. Now, in a future lost earning setting, if I am no longer able to do my job because of an injury for the next 20 years, there still may be other kinds of work that I can do. And so what I'm required to do under the law is go out and find something that I can do to offset that lost future income. And that's the mitigation, that's the duty to mitigate. So that's another factor that comes into making a claim for future lost earnings. Now, in addition to having an economist look at the numbers, we may even get a vocational counselor involved to see what kind of possibilities there are for our client, especially the catastrophically injured client who may have some really serious impairments. We might really need to do a hard look and a deep dive into what it is that they could vocationally accomplish despite their injuries. One example, and this is one of the more inspirational examples that I can think of, is a client, this was a workers' comp claim, but still, a client who suffered a devastating electrocution injury and was left as a quadriplegic, essentially a quadriplegic, only had minimal use of the right arm, ended up going to school, learning how to be a medical billing code person. They were able to do medical billing, which I thought was admirable given the severity of the injuries, that they had the wherewithal and the determination really to go out there and learn something despite the severity of their injuries. So that's a good example of somebody really going probably way beyond the call of duty to mitigate the harm they suffered in terms of future lost income. Now, the other kind of future lost income claim is really, it's called a future lost earning capacity claim. And what we're doing when we make that claim is we're really focused on the lost opportunities to earn, as opposed to the actual lost earnings. And there's a case in Oregon. It's one of these, we call it a leading case or a seminal case, where a plaintiff, an injured person making the claim, made a lost earning capacity claim. I believe it was a woman who was not working outside of the house. So she was not actually earning income. She was working, but she wasn't earning income. And the plaintiff's attorney asserted a lost earning capacity claim. And the court said, yes, that is a valid claim. You do not need to actually be earning money at the time of your injury. If you are limited in your ability to earn money because of your injuries, you can make this claim. And again, this is an expert-driven claim because we're talking about potentially decades of future lost earning capacity. And we need to really look at the specific circumstances that our client faces and what their skills are, what they can still do, what kind of opportunities they lost. But at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're saying, look, ladies and gentlemen of the jury or an arbitration panel, or if we're presenting a settlement proposal to an adjuster, basically what you're doing is you're showing your audience that this injured person had 27 doors available to them. They could do one of these 27 things. And we might even be able to show that they did do quite a bit of different things throughout their career. And you see that a lot with people who work with their hands and people who live in the more rural parts of the state. They are a tenacious and adaptable breed. And they, one month they might be out on a crabbing vessel, and 3 months after that, they might be setting chokers. They're here, there, and everywhere. So somebody like that, what you're basically saying is there were so many doors open to them, and now some or most or a large portion of those doors are shut. And that's the lost earning capacity claim. Now, a vocational expert and an economist, and or it could be either or both, will figure out a way to put a value on that loss. And that's another type of economic loss, because we're able to objectify it. We're able to make it an objective number, and we can show our math when we come up with that figure. So that's the future lost earning capacity claim. So we have future lost income, future lost earning capacity. Both of these kinds of claims are expert driven. Both of these claims are typical or more common in a case where somebody has a serious or catastrophic injury that is significantly life-changing. I hope this video is helpful. If you have questions, you can check out my injury guide. It's a personal injury guide. I'll provide a link below. I also have other videos that go into more detail about economic losses and non-economic losses in the Oregon injury claim setting. I also will leave my contact link if you have questions, and if we can't help you, we will find somebody who can, or at least give you some resources that you can take with you. Thank you again for watching. Take care.